I'd like to introduce Mr. Joe Carter. Many of you may already know Joe. He and his wife were alternated as directors and full-time volunteers at this museum for 17 years. And during that time, there were some landmarks that were reached, Joe. Among those were opening the Tony Award-winning Broadway musical, The Will Rogers Follies, at the Palace Theater in New York. Ran for over 900 performances. They also oversaw the publishing of a 5-volume Papers of Will Rogers and many biographies and magazine stories. Also a creation of a children's museum here, raising the replica barn at the Dog Iron Ranch by Amish farmers while adding a herd of Texas Longhorns, just like Will Rogers' father did. And they infused $5 million in capital improvements during that time here. And Joe and Michelle retired 17 years ago. They then traced Will Rogers' footsteps across South Africa, Australia, Europe, and even stood with actor James Whitmore on the banks of the crash site near Point Barrow, Alaska. We'd like to welcome Mr. Bart Taylor. He was born and raised in Owasso. He's a graduate of Southern Nazarene University and Northeastern State University with a master's in U.S. history. He worked at the Will Rogers Museum, works at the museum as an educator. Then he moved to the Gilcrease, the Prairie Grove Battlefield State Park in Arkansas, and taught middle school in geography. He's been the Will Rogers interpreter here for the last 2 years and is an author of 2 Will Rogers children's books. He has a passion for sharing U.S. history and loves helping kids find their connection to history. And we are very honored to be joined by Will Rogers' great-granddaughter, Miss Jennifer Rogers Etcheverry. She is a member of the board of directors of this museum and a member of the board of the National Cowboy and Western Heritage Museum in Oklahoma City. Thank you for joining us today.
Lindsay says you can stay on stage.
Say what?
Lindsay says you can stay on stage.
Oh, I'm okay. Thanks for coming out today. We wanted to ask just a few questions. I'll ask a few questions and then we'll throw it open to anybody that has a question that they want to ask. Oh, okay. They want me to come up on stage here, so come up here. I'm gonna come up here. Just anybody take this and run with it. Why do you think that Will Rogers resonated with the people of his time in such an impactful way? And use the microphone, please.
First, if you study Will Rogers, you'll
There you go.
You'll find that Will Rogers was a very intelligent man. He had a very high IQ. He read a lot. He read newspapers, and he traveled the world 3 times paying attention. The man had an incredible mind. He blocked that out when he became a communicator. And this man knew how to communicate. And it came to him, I suppose, because he had to try one time to learn the Cherokee language. Boy, that'll teach you to communicate. The man could talk, and he could write. When I was a newsman, which I was for the United Press and other newspapers, they taught me to write with a 9th grade education person. I think that Will Rogers understood that thoroughly, and he may have invented that theory.
What do you think, Jennifer?
Can you repeat the question?
Oh, yeah. Why do you think that he resonated, that he connected so easily with people all over the world?
Because he was a common man. He was just like everybody else. And he never changed. He never let that go to his head. And we all know how a lot of celebrities today are. I mean, you know, if you really think about it, he was the most famous person not in the United States, but in the world at the time of his death. And he was just that good old, you know, homespun cowboy. And he just made those connections with just the common everyday folk. And like you saw in your documentary, and he could sit and, you know, have dinner at the president's house, you know. So I think that he was just that was a gift. I don't know who gave it to him. It's very rarely seen nowadays.
Bart, you were the interpreter for many years. How do you do it? How would you connect with people?
When I'm connecting to kids, so when they're in here, I'm always telling them that the older folks, and I always look up here because I don't want to look people in the eyes when I say older folks, right? First off, I just love everybody in here. So when I'm talking to the kids, I say, these older folks, they always come to me and they say, we need somebody like Will Rogers today. It's everybody. It's not Democrats or Republicans. It's everybody saying we need somebody like Will today. And so I turn that on the kids. I say, well, listen, when the older folks come here in droves on the tour buses, they're telling me how much we need somebody like Will Rogers today for our younger kids to inspire them to become more like somebody who never met a man I didn't like, right? So when we're telling kids, oh, he was this talented roper, he's this movie star, he made 71 movies, he had the biggest radio show, yada, yada, yada. Well, what did he want to be remembered by? Well, it's the thing that's on his statue. When you walk by and you rub his feet for good luck, we tell the kids to do that too as well. You guys need to rub the feet for good luck. People have been doing that since 38. We cleaned them today, so you're good. But when you go by there, you rub them for good luck, and you look down there, it says Will Rogers, 1879 to 1935. But right below that says exactly what Will wanted to be known for. And what is that? I never met a man I didn't like. That's what we fire kids up to be, right? We want those kids to emulate Will Rogers' character traits, empathy, humor, wit, and kindness. And so, yeah, he's one of those guys that can still inspire kids to be that person.
Joe, is there anybody that you can think of that would even comes close to what Will Rogers achieved in his life that we have today?
It simply is not possible. He's an icon. He's kind of like when there's a famous cowboy singer that talks about when he has a spiritual problem, he thinks of Jesus. And when he has a secular problem, he thinks of Will Rogers. And I don't think there'll ever be anything like this walk the world again, either of the two dudes.
Jennifer, being a descendant of Will Rogers, I mean, personally, what is that like to have such a famous relative?
Well, I always say I didn't have much choice in it. It wasn't until 1991 when we went to New York for the opening of the Will Rogers Follies. My grandfather took all the family. There were 13 of us. Because we grew up very humble. We really, truly didn't know much about Will Rogers. It wasn't a common dinner discussion in our house. And my grandparents and my dad, they were just very quiet about it. And it wasn't until 1991, and I sat there in New York and watched that musical, and I thought, wow, I had no idea. And I went to my grandfather, and I said, I want to learn more. And my grandfather is Will's youngest son, Jim. And I just began shadowing my grandfather and going to events with him, coming back here. And then next it was my father. And I just, grew into the role of where I am today. And the greatest gift that it has given me is to meet people that their stories have been passed down to them by their father or their grandfather. And those are becoming very, very rare and few because as time passes, people forget who he was. And so I feel that that's my job, is to go out and keep his legacy alive and support the museum and work with the amazing group of volunteers here that have such a passion for him. And so, it's an honor. But I'll be honest with you, it's a lot of work because it's difficult nowadays. So thank you for something like this, because if it wasn't for things like this, it would be even more challenging.
Well, it's a great honor. Thank you. Now, there's the legislature approved a $7 million stipend for improvements here at the museum. One of you, what's the plan? What's going to happen?
Well, so yes, we received $7 million from a bond, and we've raised some additional funds. It's an $18 million renovation project. It will include a event center that will be right off of this theater here, a 3-story event center with all new offices. We can move the offices over there. The second floor will be state-of-the-art vault for the collection here at the museum, which sadly is not protected very well because the vaults here are very dated. There's a lot of artifacts that we cannot preserve correctly, so these funds are crucial to build this new structure so we can get those artifacts in there, properly preserve them. The top floor will be a 360-degree event center overlooking Claremore, where we can host wedding events, conferences, and will raise revenue for us, so that'll be a revenue for us. Once that is complete, we will then close the museum for a short time, and we'll begin renovation here with all new collections, state-of-the-art touch screens. As you can walk around here and see, so many of us think this is a great place, and it is, but it's very dated and very limited to what new technology has to offer. So we are about $7 million away. If any of you want to give a couple million today, that would be awesome. But as so many of you know, this place was raised with nickels and dimes and dollars. It takes just a little of everything. But we're really excited, and we're hoping to break ground in early 2025 and have it complete in 2026 for the 100th anniversary of Route 66. So
The Will Rogers Highway.
That's correct. Yes. So that's it in a nutshell. I'll say it. Yeah.
Well, thank you. Does anybody have a question? We'll send a microphone. Oh, you got one? Okay.
Questions?
Robert, you just made the comment, Route 66, the Will Rogers Highway. Could you expand on that? Because I'd not heard that.
I can tell you this. So in 1952, Will Jr. starred playing the role of his father in the Will Rogers story, and with Jane Wyman. And when they released the movie in 1952, Will Jr., along with Ford Motor Company sponsored a caravan from Chicago to Santa Monica, and they were on a week journey. The celebrities got in these Fords, and they drove all the way from Chicago to Santa Monica, and it was rededicated as the Will Rogers Memorial Highway at that time. There are markers along that highway that still stand today, and there's a lot of documentaries and things about that Michael Wallace has done. So I am working with Route 66 and Michael Wallace, who has been appointed by the president. There has been a commission appointed, 2 representatives from each state that has the route going through it. And we are working to recreate that road trip in 2026 from Chicago to Santa Monica. And you are going to start hearing a ton about this 100th anniversary of Route 66 and bringing it back as the Will Rogers Highway. So, yeah. So you're going to start seeing a lot of stuff. AAA is behind this. Millions of dollars are being put into this. Oklahoma is starting to it's going to be huge, huge. So, yeah. Cool. Yeah. Just one more thing that we're doing. Just one.
Anybody else have another question?
Can I add one thing? This lady is doing out in California what the whole state of Oklahoma and OETA is marvelous, by the way. That was one hell of a good job. I think he deserves it. But this woman at the old Will Rogers Ranch is just a powerhouse, and she's keeping the story alive out there. I adore what she's done, Jen.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm on the foundation. If you ever get to California, Will's place, his ranch in Santa Monica, it's 186 acres, Will Rogers State Historic Park. And I started a foundation to support that ranch as well. It's a fantastic place. Everything in the house is original that the family left behind. Polo is still played during the polo season there. And there's hiking and trail rides. It's magical. I know a few years ago, some of the docents here took a trip out there. We hosted you, and it's magical. So if you ever get a chance to go to California, just reach out to me, and we'll hook you up.
There's a polo season?
There is. From April to September, they play polo on the polo field that Will graded himself.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
We were so lucky in doing this documentary. There were so many videos and pictures, to illustrate this with. Jennifer Holt, the curator of collections here, made a quip that I have to repeat. She said, he never met a camera he didn't like. Oh, another question.
My question is about the California ranch. I'd heard once that the state of California had considered maybe selling that because of budget concerns. Is that ranch perfectly safe that would never happen?
Well, we all know that it was Betty Rogers was the woman behind Will. She was the financer. She ran the books. She took care of everything. When Will passed and Betty deeded that park, that ranch to the state of California, it came with a stipulation. She was very wise in what she did. And in the deed of gift, it is stated that if the state of California cannot maintain that ranch, it reverts back to the family. So the state of California hates Jennifer Rogers because I am constantly reminding them of that, and so they cannot sell it. It would have to revert to the family. Yeah.
Thank you.
Now, Bart, you've written a couple of children's books. You want to show those? I see you brought those today.
Well, guys, shameless plug time number 2. All right. As you know, Jennifer Rogers here, Bart Taylor here, Joe Carter here, Will Rogers folks. We have Will Rogers in mind for the future and how he can inspire tomorrow, right? For today, he's a person for today that can inspire tomorrow. So what I saw was there was a need for Will Rogers in schools. And not only do we go out to schools, the education team, the hands-on historians, and myself, we go out to all these schools. We went out to 25 public schools this last year and over 20 public libraries and saw 6,000 kids in an outreach season and an outreach year. So one thing I wanted to make was a book or 2 books. Will Rogers and the Great White House Sleepover. And it details the time that he was invited to spend the night at the White House by Calvin Coolidge. Now, him and Calvin, did they agree politically? Not a bit, right? Will said we elected Calvin Coolidge to do nothing. That's exactly what he did. And so when he went to Coolidge's house, the White House, my friends, he was raised in the White House on the Verdigris River, right? Just down the street. So when he went to the real White House, he got to meet Coolidge and got to kind of spend time with him. He wrote an article in the Saturday Evening Post about his time with Coolidge, and he detailed to his audience, which was in the multiple millions, that Coolidge was some person just like them and not some European king living in splendor. It was Will Rogers' articles in the Saturday Evening Post that made the president behind the scenes come alive. One of the first journalists to actually take the time to meet with Coolidge, to show that Coolidge was a normal person. And so when we go into the schools, I donate my books as well. So when we go out there, I read my books, and then I do rope tricks. I do 10 rope tricks, whereas Will had 88 rope tricks. I do about a percentage of those, right? When I also go out, I did Will Rogers and his Great Presidential Pals. It's the second one that just came out. It details his friendship with 5 presidents. Now, my friends, this is real friendship. This is vacationing. These are birthday parties. This is spending the night at the White House. This is Will Rogers hanging out with the top dog. And those top dogs, who did they want to be around the most? It was Will Rogers. And so just showing kids that this guy is a fresh person for today. He can inspire us. I never met a man I didn't like is something we need more of today. I hear it all the time, right? We can agree that that's something we need in this country right now. And so how are we going to fire up kids? Well, I'm going to write these books, donate them to their libraries, and that way when they leave, they can connect back to that content and connect back to Will Rogers in a fun way. Now, when you come here to the museum, of course, there's so much great stuff here, but sometimes those black and white photos will turn those kids off, right? And so I wanted to create a special way with Greg White as the illustrator to connect to those great character traits that we need today, okay? So there you go, long-winded. Thank you. Yeah.
And I just want to add, because when Bart came to me with this idea and ran some things by me, is what I really liked is they're factual. They're not fictional. And so he has done his homework on them. And this one's very valuable.
Yes.
This is so valuable right here.
Who wrote the foreword to this first book here? I believe it is one Jennifer Rogers Etcheverry, right?
Yeah. So if you go buy a book, I will sign it. Bart and I will sign it.
There you go.
Yeah. No, they're great. They
Well,
really
and I was
are.
going to say, do you want to share a little bit of what you're doing to help kind of bring in just that full circle? I mean,
Sure.
kids, adults, everybody.
Sure. I have about, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago, one of my very first friends that I ever met here in Claremore, Sarah Nail, sitting right down there, she was getting her real estate license and came up to me one day and said, I got a challenge for you, basically is what she said. She said, you need to turn Claremore into Pawhuska. And this little girl right here, I now own pretty much the whole street behind the museum here, thanks to her. And the most poor, I've taken collections too. But I am getting ready to start the first ever Will Rogers experienced theme Airbnbs. And so you can come to the museum and come and spend your day here, and then literally go across the street and stay in one of the houses that I'm redoing and decorating, all Will Rogers. So it's a work in progress, but I owe it all to Sarah here. So we're kind of a team that are, taking over Claremore. So if you need a realtor, Sarah Nail is your girl. So, so I'm really excited. I'm really excited for that. It's a whole new thing. So, yeah.
Absolutely. So stay tuned. Oh, we have another question?
Being of the heritage of Cherokee, now that they have taken over the house and the ranch, is there more to come in that regards to being connected with the history of Will Rogers and coming out with, are you working with the Cherokee like they're doing with the Plains and things of that nature?
I feel like I'm dominating this panel here. But sadly, I do know this. Well, not sadly. I'm working with them. So, as we all know, budget cuts. The state has been cutting our budget for years, and the birthplace alone needs just tremendous work. And there's only so much we can do when we're trying to keep this place alive as well. So we started working with the Cherokee Nation several years ago about this project. It was intense because they did come to the family, but it was the best decision. We stand behind it. They will take care of it. They will turn it into what it needs to be. I don't know 100% of their plan. I know a little bit, but it's going to be amazing. I was just out there yesterday, as a matter of fact, or day before yesterday. I apologize. And it's going to turn. They've got the funds and the passion to bring the real Will Rogers story. Clem Rogers they really want to focus a lot on Clem and the birthplace. So we'll know a lot more in the next 6 months. But it's a decision that was mutual, and we just couldn't afford to do it anymore. So it was just being run down. So it's a good thing.
I would think so, because the history, of Oklahoma being an Indian territory and them coming in. And I would think that Bart would like that, because that would be a really great place for kids to really learn more about.
Right. They want to really reach out with that living experience that they can do. So it's going to be fantastic. I don't see a 10-story casino, so don't worry. Unless I was a part of it. No, I'm kidding. I know. I am kidding. I am, really.
That's all the time we have. I want to introduce Susan Cadeau, who is the Vice President for Local Production in Oklahoma for OETA.
Thank you, Robert. Thank you, everyone. we're wrapping things up, and we'll send you back out into the wild. I want to thank our esteemed panel for taking the time, not only the time it takes to sit through an interview process with Robert. He does the longest interviews of anyone I've ever seen, and I guarantee you didn't even see half of all the interview he got with these folks. We might have to package the whole things up and put them on. So I want to thank you for your time, not only here, but for the time you took to help us make this production. I want to tell you something about Back in Time. It is an Emmy award-winning program. It has won several national Wrangler Awards from the Cowboy Western Heritage Museum in Oklahoma City, which is national, and you have this movie stars come out for that. 1 year they won, and the only other media winner was Ken Burns for country music for that documentary. This producer, and Ryan Lorg, is back there in the cap. He always stays in the back. He never wants anyone to look at him. The beautiful video you saw, he shot it, he edited it, he makes all of his own graphics. He has been with OETA for 10 years. Robert's been 11 years. How many, Ryan? 12, we don't know. He's been here a while. And
So
Robert,
long you forgot.
Robert even longer. They're the only two who worked on this story. Is that correct?
Yes.
These two worked on this story, and they turned it around in less than what other stations do, and they have full teams. I see the content from other PBS member stations. They have whole teams of people putting a production together. It's these two. And I couldn't be more proud of the team we have at OETA. I want you to be proud of the people working to bring excellence to you throughout all corners of the state. Stations, other PBS member stations will pick this up. They always pick up their content. They will pick this up, and they will show it in other parts of the nation, all right? So this is a vehicle to get Oklahoma stories out. So thank you for your support, not only of this event on a frigid day, which I think is beautiful but scary, and we appreciate any support you can give to OETA and the people who are dedicated to serving you all with excellence. We appreciate you all. Thank you.